if you've already got an iPhone 10, there's really no point upgrading one more generation unless you really want a bigger phone, for example, because you couldn't get one last year. There is one significant advantage which I was quite interested in. If I go to Daring Fireball, he had a comparison, which unfortunately we have to rely on the projector to see. The camera is quite significantly better, even though the obvious explanation is right. So he's done side-by-side shots. You could go away. The two on the top left there, you can probably see it well enough on the projector. The one on the left, this one over here, was taken by the iPhone 10, and that was taken by an iPhone 10s. So the first point was that the field is slightly wider. The camera's actually got a slightly wider angle lens, which means you get more content. Also, you'll notice that the white light shining straight on this clown's face is handled an awful lot better by the newer model. So they've actually done quite a lot in terms of I think it's the Smart HDR feature. It's able to take multiple shots, amalgamate them very quickly, and does it completely automatically now, rather than making you pick whether or not to do that. And as a result, it does some quite useful things like the building reflections here are noticeably better on the iPhone 10s. Anything basically involving excess light, sunlight in the frame or reflections or that sort of thing, is handling it a lot better. You probably can't see it from back in the audience, but the writing that's on behind the people's heads there is actually legible on this one that's not on that one. That sort of level of detail. So that's 1 year improvement in not entirely in the camera technology, though there are some hardware improvements in the camera, but it's just the software processing they're able to do, the additional software processing they're able to do in the much faster neural engine, which is able to do an awful lot more work to make the photos look nicer without actually taking any longer.
Is that just not the density of the pixels?
No, the pixels density is exactly the same, 12 megapixels. Apple has stuck with 12 megapixels now for several generations, and the number of megapixels is usually a false indication of how good the camera quality is, because it's not actually the megapixels that matter, it's things like the lenses and various other bits which are more important, and the sensor, because what they've done is they've actually made the sensor physically larger, which means it captures more light, so they can do a lot more with it, with all the processing that they do. It's hard to see some of these because they don't have them next to each other. There's another example. Look at those two. That's the sun in the frame over in the background, so it's got this familiar effect to photographers everywhere with the sun beam coming through the trees. It's more or less gone on the one on the right, so you can see a lot more detail. Doesn't wash things out as much. That one is, couldn't actually see what the obvious differences were apart from the building not being quite so washed out. But I think it's got a little bit better dealing with the bright and dark. The alleyway is actually a bit more visible on the one on the right, I think.
Oh, and if you look at the back building, see how you get the reflection off the glass.
Yeah, that was the obvious one, yeah. And that one there with the light coming in from behind his head. That was his wife sitting across the table taking a photo. That was quite dramatically improved as well. That one again, it mostly appears to be the washing out of the light. Yeah, there wasn't a real comparison. Those two there again, its detail comes out a bit better, I think, in the newer one. But that one is harder to tell. I can't really spot an obvious difference between them. Anyway, so the cameras are improved, but unless you're a really serious mobile phone photographer, upgrading one generation is not much point. However, upgrading 3 generations, say, if you've got an iPhone 6s or something like that, going straight to an iPhone 10s or 10s Max is quite worthwhile in terms of many improvements overall, was the usual story. So, all right. I've already covered the key details in my article, so I don't really want to spend a lot of time on that because most people won't be rushing out and buying one. Find the right page again. iPhone. Yes, it is already available, so they're still saying pre-order, which is a bit puzzling because it's actually available. The iPhone XR is probably of more interest to a greater number of people because it's about $500 cheaper than the XS. So the XR is basically using the same screen technology as all the older models like the iPhone 8 and the 7 and so forth. It's LCD rather than OLED, and you remove a few features like 3D touch, and that combination allows it to be quite a lot cheaper than the iPhone XS, because the XS is starting at just about $2,000. The XR is starting at $1,400, so it's much more affordable. Still quite expensive as far as a cell phone goes, but if you think of it as your primary portable computing device, it actually is not all that unreasonable to be spending that sort of money on it. But I'm at the stage now where I'm buying a new phone every 4 or 5 years, so it's sort of like, think of it as a five-year investment, and Apple supports them for 6 years from when they're new, so you can expect, as long as the battery lasts and you don't break it or anything, it's possibly worthwhile. As I noted in my article, Apple is no longer selling the iPhone SE or the 6S or the 6S Plus, and some people at least will be disappointed by the loss of the SE, because that means there's no iPhones being sold at that sort of size anymore. That's the 4-inch screen. So if you like a physically small phone, Apple's being rather vague about it, but I get the impression they're actually intending to keep selling those through carrier partners. So that means you should be able to buy one with a plan from Vodafone or Spark or 2 Degrees, at least for some time, don't know how long. So have a look around if you really want to get one and you have an older model and you had been thinking about upgrading to it and you hadn't got around to it yet. But that will save quite a lot of money compared to buying the whiz-bang latest and greatest ones. Okay, any questions on those? Otherwise we can move on. Silence. Good. Anybody interested in talking about the Apple Watch Series 4?
Is that one?
Hmm?
Wouldn't mind a run over it.
Yep, okay. So basically the watch, I've got the comparison pages up there, so that's an example of the two of them side by side. Series 3 was the one which was released last year, so that's still being sold as a low-end model. The Series 4 is the newly released one. They've made the body slightly bigger. It's about 2 millimeters larger in each dimension, but it's a bit thinner. So the actual volume is reduced, so it doesn't quite as bulky on your wrist, but it's larger than the previous ones. Also, the screen goes a lot closer to the edge, so there's actually quite a lot more screen display area on it. And the one on the left with the Series 4 showing that particular very complicated display with lots of things on it, they couldn't achieve that before with that number of things on it because there wasn't enough space to display them at sufficient size. So by making the screen larger physically and getting closer to the edge, they've significantly increased the screen area, and it can show a lot more information now than it could. It's interestingly, if you had previously had the larger model Apple Watch, the smaller model actually has more screen space on it with the Series 4. So that 38mm one going up to the 40mm, the 40mm has actually got more screen space than the previous 42mm models. So you can go to a smaller phone and still have more screen if you really want to. You have to watch out though, in some cases the watch straps are not compatible with the other sized body. So if you've got a particular type of strap that only works with one size, you might need to go with the bigger model rather than the smaller model, or vice versa, that sort of thing. Price-wise, these new Series 4s went up in price. So the base price, not just the fact that the New Zealand dollar's getting worse, therefore they put the prices up, but also in the US they went up in price. They dropped the price a bit on the Series 3, but basically you're looking at around $700 to buy a Series 4, $480 to buy a Series 3. They don't currently sell the stainless steel bodied models in New Zealand because those ones all have the cellular capability, and none of the New Zealand carriers are supporting that a year after Apple introduced it, which means that we basically are missing out on I bought a stainless steel one because I prefer stainless steel watches for the original one. So I would like to buy a new watch. The one I want isn't available, so I'm not going to. And the first generation one is still working fine, so I have no... It's a question really of how quickly the carriers get on board and are willing to support the somewhat complicated way that the watch works, because the cellular models have a eSIM inside them, and I noticed that in addition to the Series 4 and Series 3's cellular watches not working, the iPhone XS, XS Max and XR also now have an eSIM, but they also have a standard SIM slot, so you can actually have two SIMs, two phone accounts, and switch between them. But the eSIM doesn't work in New Zealand. Again, the carriers haven't been willing to support it yet. So we have no way of knowing when that's going to be resolved. It's a question of how quickly they decide they want to do it, or whether they want to do it at all.
One country too that didn't support the eSIM either.
Well, China doesn't,
They have to have
but
two SIMs.
that was because they didn't want to miss out on sales in China. They deliberately made a two-SIM model, but they don't sell it anywhere outside of China. So, yeah, that would be nicer if they sold that in more countries, but at the moment they don't. So I expect that Apple is hoping that the other countries will come on board eventually and will support eSIM, so
That'll be the way it will be across the board later on. eSIM,
at some point,
SIMs.
the cellular model should then become available. The other oddity about the cellular model is it actually has the same phone number as your iPhone, whereas if you have an iPad, a cellular iPad, such as either of mine here, they've actually got their own unique phone number, even if they're linked to the same account. So that's a somewhat different feature which the carriers have to have special support for, because the same phone number is in two places on their cellular network at the same time, which is something they probably haven't had to deal with
I'll
before.
just give you some useless information. The actual SIMs to the actual companies are only worth 13 cents.
Yeah, not surprising.
They're charging them at $5.
Well, that's just mainly administrative costs,
Yeah,
and to discourage you from losing it. Okay, so does that answer most of the questions pretty much?
Is there a minimum requirement to the linkage to the phones?
Yes, you still need an iPhone. You have to have a compatible iPhone, which is currently a 5S or later, to use an Apple Watch at all. They added GPS as a feature in the Series 3, I think, if not Series 2. And so that means you can get more accurate positioning with just the watch, but you lose all connectivity unless you've got your phone with you still. So unless you have the cellular model, in which case it's possible to get cellular data and make phone calls on the watch, but that won't work in New Zealand, so that's not available yet. So that's what I'm waiting for, basically. I'm not interested in getting another watch unless this one starts causing me problems until that point. Well, there's a size comparison, so you can see the Series 3 is 38 or 42, and the other one is 40 or 44. So you can just make out that screen is actually bigger dimensions than that one, but it also has rounded corners, so there's some subtle differences there. Okay.
Underneath them slightly different, so right.
Oh yeah, there's a new style of heart sensor. The fourth generation, they've done a better redesign of the optical heart sensor. I don't actually know if any of its features are available in New Zealand, because they advertised it can automatically detect what was it, atrial fibrillation or something like that, or some form of arrhythmia, just using the optical sensor, and it can do that automatically. But I think that's only available in the US because the FDA have approved, or whichever one it is that does the health in the US, have approved it as being a acceptable medical measurement device, because that's got to be approved by the appropriate authorities. And that won't be available here. And the other feature they've added is the electrical heart sensor, which lets you basically put one finger on the digital crown, and it measures your heart, electrical heart rhythm, and produces a EKG, which you can then record and supply to your doctor. So if you're having heart arrhythmia of some kind, it can be useful as a record-keeping measure, so that you can actually find, my heart was doing this yesterday, but the doctor doesn't know what was wrong with your heart yesterday. Now there might be enough information to actually record that. Again, that's US only at the moment, and hopefully will come to other countries in time. And that's only on the 4th generation model. This one's more interesting, fall detection. It's actually got smart enough accelerometer now that it can detect what it believes to be you've suddenly fallen over, as opposed to you just sat down. It's measuring the speed at which you've gone down suddenly. And if you don't get up again, it can make an emergency phone call for you. But again, that currently requires having your phone with you. So if you tend to leave if you've just got your watch with you, it's no help. But if you've got your phone with you, it can possibly make an emergency call, send out contacts to your emergency contact people, that sort of thing. So that could be quite useful for older people who are getting a bit infirm, that they have something like this as a detector. Okay. Any other questions on the watch? That's more or less where we know. They are available already in some of the shops. I think I didn't have a close look at the watch while I was at JB Hi-Fi today, but they did at least list it on their price sheet on the table. probably Noel Leeming's and Tory Street's the best place to go because they've got the proper Apple display with all the watches on it. They're more likely to have some models there to look at. Okay.
Yeah, we've got done our ones to the house, and actually the Apple, I think similar to Joby Hi-Fi.
Yeah, well, there's two different degrees of how they've done that. The one in Noel Leeming's on Tory Street is the official Apple display in places that don't have Apple stores, whereas the other ones are Apple curated, but on a smaller scale. The Noel Leeming one's got more space, so they've actually put more there. Yeah. Okay. All right. Leslie, do you want to get supper ready? We'll have a break shortly. Thank you. So moving on from those two, Apple didn't announce anything else major in terms of hardware, well, nothing in terms of hardware, though since I wrote my article in the magazine, there has been some developer-sourced leaks by finding information buried in the latest software releases there is mention of a device called a Fall 2018 iPad. Fall meaning autumn or spring as far as we're concerned, other hemisphere, which means that Apple has got some references in the current next software build that there is going to be some new iPad device coming out. So the most likely explanation is the rumoured iPad Pros, probably due around about a month from now. So it's likely to be late October when they may have a product launch or a press releases or whatever they decide to do about them. Similarly, we haven't heard anything more definite about Macs, but that again could be same sort of time frame. Typically what they've done in the past a couple of times is they've had a October media event, which is smaller scale than the September one, just to releases the new iPads and anything else worthy of mention, and anything else just gets released at the same time. So we'll probably see something like that. So if you are in the market for a new iPad and you want an iPad Pro, it's probably worth waiting. If you want a new iPad and you don't want an iPad Pro, it's probably better to buy one now because the normal iPad is not going to get updated this time, and it's probably going to get more expensive when the iPad Pro comes out because Apple will do their price adjustments for the exchange rate. So, matter of just reading the tea leaves right and guessing. If you want something, buy it now. If you don't think it's going to have a new model that you want, is sort of the recommendation I'm doing at the moment. I haven't seen any iPad specials, but it's also worth keeping an eye out for 10% off Mac specials, which some people are doing still every weekend. So those are worthwhile saving, especially now while the prices are lower. I know a few people who've made use of those over the years. Okay. iOS 12. So, where's a good place to start with this one? If I plug my old phone in. Right. Okay, apart from the ghosting. So this is my old iPhone 6 Plus running iOS 12. So it's the second oldest model that's able to run iOS 12, just to give you an idea of what performance looks like. The display scrolling and launching of standard applications and things is, in my experience, substantially faster than iOS 11 was on this phone. I was sitting here twiddling my thumbs waiting for settings to load before, and that's just nice and snappy. App Store, that probably won't have an internet connection. I'll just make sure that's... because this phone hasn't actually got a working cellular connection, so I'll just hop onto my working internet, which is that one. Because I'm not paying casual data rates for for my prepay account on here, so I just use my other phone via personal hotspot. So if I go into App Store as an example, and hop into the Today view and then start scrolling that around, it's a bit jerky scrolling, but is quite usable, and I can go into Siri's got the shortcut and loads a description of that, and I mean, usability wise, it's I think substantially improved over what we had before, especially on older models. So if you are holding off in terms of you're not sure whether it's safe to upgrade. If you have an older model in particular, it's definitely worth it just to get the speed up. Now this is mostly limited by the internet speed here. There's not actually the device speed loading there. Right, that's it way down the bottom. Yep. So yeah, the scrolling here is I'm finding is quite usable. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better than it was before. So general usability is pretty good. That phone is not a good one to use as an example of some of the new features because I haven't done much on it. This one is a better example, so I'll just unlock this one. My iPhone 10, wait for that to catch up. One of the new features which which I've turned on but haven't done much with yet is the new screen time feature, which can measure how much you use your phone and what you use it for. And it's rather scary. So it's telling me I've used my phone 55 minutes a day, other is 19 minutes, reading and reference is 17, and productivity is 4 minutes.
You're the result of New Zealand's productivity is going down.
Well, no, I'm not. I haven't been using my phone for anything. I've been doing other stuff. So I spent 24 minutes in Safari. Of that, 50, generally in Safari, didn't actually know where that was. I was on stuff.co.nz for 15 minutes this morning. That's in various points. I've used. While I was solving the target puzzle, I was referring to my dictionary app for 7 minutes. That's Chambers. I've been on the Ars Technica website for 7 minutes. I've been using the Pay My Park app for 2 minutes, the Shortcuts app for 2 minutes, have a quick look at it, and the Settings app for 2 minutes. And there's more there which got shorter time, so I've used things briefly for quite a few of them. Number of times I've picked it up per hour. It's noticed if I'm in the habit of picking my phone up too often and just idly doing something on then not doing something more productive. How many I've actually got most of my notifications turned off, so I haven't had a good play with the notifications feature yet. So you get a general idea of what you're using your phone for. If I go to the last 7 days, on average I've been using my phone for nearly 2 hours a day, which is a more realistic view, because what I typically do in the morning is I pick up the phone when I wake up and I spend at least an hour reading all the websites, and then I tend to use it a bit more during the day for other things. So today is an unusual day because it's Sunday in the US, therefore there's not much news compared to normal, so I didn't spend as much time using it. So on Tuesday, there was an awful lot going on, and I'll bet that's because that's when Apple released everything, and that was why I was busy reading stuff. It's telling me I've used games for 1 hour and 27 minutes, mostly the Sudoku Plus app, which is the only game I'm actually playing on, so I'm not sure what the other one is. But again, it's saying that most of what I use my phone for is Safari, so that's useful information if you're trying to work out what you actually do on your phone. It sort of allows you to do self-monitoring. And if you were worried about any of this usage pattern, you can actually go to, you can force yourself to not use your device if you find you're doing it too much by scheduling downtime, app limits, exclude things from it, and you can do content and privacy restrictions. And you can also set a passcode. If you're doing this on a child's device, you can configure it to not be able, they can't get around the settings. But on your own device, you can have it alert you to the fact you've been playing a game too long and give you the option of saying, yes, I know that, I want to continue anyway, for example, or something like that. So I thought that was quite amusing, but
I've beaten you. I've used my phone for 3 hours and 17 minutes, and most of it is social media.
So it's quite interesting. It's just as a sort of data gathering thing. You can, when you're setting up iOS 12, it asks you if you want to turn on the feature. You can say no, in which case it won't gather any information about you. It's also worth pointing out that the information it gathers is all completely local to your phone. It's not synced anywhere, so it doesn't actually store it on Apple. They don't keep stats on what people are doing with it or anything like that. It's just information you can use for your own purposes. So that was one of the new features. Now, should we pause at this point? I'll just first up a break, and then we'll come back to just talking about iOS 12 stuff briefly. Thank you. No, so it's not smart enough to work out where I was for some of these photos. That might be because I don't actually have any location information on those photos. So it certainly found all the bike photos quite quickly. So that's handy. And it's also subdivided them according to location, and it's actually quite handy. It gives you lots of categories items, moments, so I can easily find things mentioning bikes, or if I search for something mentioning a dog, for example, then neighbours, yeah, so it's a smarter version of what we already had in terms of being able to find things with certain, that was a feature already in iOS 11, it could recognise certain objects in photos like horses and dogs and cats and beach scenes and mountains and that sort of thing, so it's adding more features to that sort of level of functionality. So, and I didn't have to do anything, I just did it all by itself. I didn't have to tell it this photo had a dog in it, it just knew that. Though it probably got some of them wrong. It often, it's found the statue of the dog. However, that does not have a dog in the photo. That's Maddie, Maddie on a beanbag. But it's got the right colour scheme. And there's Kathy with her dog, yes, that's right. Yes, so can you find people's names? If I look for Lester. Yep.
Does it use text at all in that search, or is it?
Well, I haven't bothered to label anything. I have used the faces feature to categorise a fair number of photos to the right people, but I haven't gone through and put keywords on my photos. I haven't done anything like that. I haven't even organised them now because it's lost the events feature, which I did use for a while to organise things back in iPhoto, but it doesn't have that feature anymore. So I have no collection, apart from the albums I've created, a few of them over the years as I've wanted to gather particular photos for particular reasons, that sort of thing, but it's just been very, very smart. And I imagine that works better on the newer models with faster processors because it's got more processing time to work out that sort of thing. The shortcuts feature I haven't played with yet, but I've had a brief look at it. So this is nominally Siri shortcuts, so it's under Siri in search. And what it's actually done is, I haven't created any yet, but it's monitored things that I do frequently on my phone, and it is suggesting things that I might want to create a shortcut for. And you'll notice one of them is calling my partner, for example, because I often call her at home. So what I could do to I can't use that one as a real example, but if I go to all shortcuts, if I go, I quite like this one, find Suzanne. So I'm often wondering where she is at the moment. So if I go, I can actually create a shortcut for that. And what does it do? Yep. Where's Sue? Done. So now what I can do is, hey Siri, where's Sue? At last count, locating. There we are. No, that's still out of date.
That's still out of date. That's Newlands going up
It's
the motorway.
halfway up the motorway, which means it was where you last were on a bus, and now it's worked out that you are here. So, so that's now a shortcut I've added to my phone, so at any time I can just ask my phone to find Suzanne easily, just by using that key phrase that I chose.
It's where Suzanne's phone is.
Yes, so it's based on, obviously, yes. But you can see anything you do frequently enough that it's recognised a pattern. So I have recently done various alarms in my clock app for making sure I remember to go and move my car before the parking expired and that sort of thing. Some text messages I've sent. Notes I've gone and visited. I was playing a podcast. I've done some calculations in PCalc. So it's given me all these as suggestions of things I've done recently that it might want me to. I've had a brief play with voice memos that showed up as well. So these are all simple suggestions. You can just do one thing and create a key phrase, or I can do a custom one. These are suggested shortcuts. All shortcuts. See all. That's calendar. Yeah, so these are all just ones that you can create based on the built-in ones. If you want to get fancier, there is actually a shortcuts app which you can get, which has that sort of stylized S-looking symbol. And I haven't done any with this yet, but it has a gallery which gives you some ideas on what you can do with it. And this one lets you create multi-part instructions with quite complicated things. So one example I saw, somebody said he had a phrase which he used to activate a Siri shortcut created with this app, which did his entire morning setup. So he has various parts of his house with HomeKit configured lighting systems, for example. So he was able to have a message he used on his phone to say that when he was leaving work, it would text his partner to let him know when he was going to be home, the fact that he was leaving work at that point. It would set the thermostat at home to the right temperature. It would turn the lights on. I did about 6 or 7 different things all at once. It was all triggered off one key phrase. And what this has actually got is directions to next event, download files, directions to get home, morning routine, when do I need to leave by, remind me at work, brush my teeth, logged caffeine records, speed dialing, share location, play a playlist, laundry timer, directions home, so similar ones, add to queue so you can, oh, okay.
And other people are developing programs to develop our brains and keep them active.
Yeah. So the idea is it gives you a whole bunch of things to start with as an idea of what you can do with it, but you can basically lots and lots of built-in features are already able to be automated using this feature set, and many apps keep adding functionality for it as well. So I can do, if I'm frequently doing certain types of complicated calculations, for example, the pCalc app can be programmed to do a particular type of expression, so I can feed a number into it and then go and make it do 17 different things or something like that. So I haven't had a decent play with it, as I said, but it looks like it has some potential. So yeah, I thought that was quite cute. The privacy stuff is hard. Oh yeah, that's just a sort of a background feature. There's so many features in it that they did a monstrously long list, and I don't particularly want to go into it all. But I've already provided links to Apple's website. You can browse through it and see whether it's worthwhile. But in effect, if you have a iPhone 5S or later, so it's 6-year-old, 2013. Is that right? Yes, 2013 or newer iPhone. You can run iOS 12 and iPads from the same year. iPad Air, I haven't actually upgraded my iPad Air because I wanted to keep one device running the old OS for comparison, but I've upgraded everything else the day it was launched. Except I've got some test devices I've deliberately left running old versions for comparison's sake. It's been very stable. I haven't noticed any problems. I have seen some reports of some niggles, but there hasn't been a rushed last-minute bug fix. Like they have sometimes in the past. Apple's iOS 11 came out and had all sorts of problems on day one, and they went through a whole series of updates several times in a row, and iOS 12 seems to be more or less stable out of the gate. Yes, that's better, isn't it? It hasn't got the effect back again. Yeah, I know that. That's all right. Quite. Yep, you can save that. So it looks like whatever the problem was with the projector, it's fixed itself. Okay.
Where did you say the problem was?
Sorry?
What's fixed itself?
The projector. When we turned it off and back on again.
It was at fault.
Yes, because the projector's been turned off and back on again. Yeah, and it's. Yeah, so I don't know what it was, but it's like kind of like it was out of alignment, and it's corrected itself. Yeah. Yeah. No, we just turned it off and back on again, so it cooled down in the meantime. Okay, where's my notes here? Yep, so iOS 12, anybody have any other questions on that? I mean, I'd be perfectly happy to recommend anybody upgrade to it straight away. It seems fine. The only complication is if you've got an old enough Mac and you manage your phone with iTunes, as I've noted in my article, you need to be running iTunes 12.8 or 12.6.5, and it's no longer possible to connect to iOS 12 devices on a Mac running Yosemite, which is OS 10 10.10. So they've done another one shift up. So El Capitan 10.11 is the oldest macOS version that can use iTunes to manage an iPhone or another iOS device running iOS 12. Okay, did that make sense? I think it came out right in the end. Trying to remember all the right buzzwords. So every year when the new version of iOS comes out, Apple raises the bar by one macOS version in terms of how far back you're allowed to be running before you drop off the bottom if you use iTunes to manage your device. If you don't use iTunes, it doesn't matter so much as long as you're running at least Lion, because then iCloud will sync a lot of things for you. It's really only the syncing media, backing up your device using iTunes, syncing other stuff through iTunes, anything device management, like using device restores, that sort of thing, you need to be running a new enough Mac OS to be able to do that. But if you're doing most of your stuff just independently, it doesn't really matter so much. It's only if you're still using iTunes to manage things. Sorry?
What about protections? Would they be afforded to the earlier models or not? If they don't upgrade?
You're talking about security updates and things like that. Well, just to take that particular example, if you have a new device for running iOS 12 or you upgrade an existing one, and you've got a Mac running Yosemite, which is 10.10, every Mac that can run Yosemite can also run El Capitan. So the only reason that people should still be running Yosemite is if they haven't got round to upgrading to El Capitan, or they have specific applications that don't work properly in El Capitan, which is not very common. That particular upgrade is usually a straightforward one. So this year it happens to be the last one in a group where you can probably upgrade your operating system to not be a problem. But just getting on to the more general question of Mac OS upgrades, tomorrow Apple is coming out with Mac OS Mojave 10.14. That will run on 2012 or newer Macs, with a couple of weird exceptions if you have one of the big Tower Mac Pros, which I don't think anybody here has. So effectively it's 2012 or later models. So if you've got a 2012 or later Mac, you will be able to upgrade to Mojave at your convenience. Apple will continue, we expect, they never confirmed this of course, but they haven't changed the pattern for a while now. They should continue to support El Capitan, no, wrong one, High Sierra 10.13 and Sierra 10.12 with security updates. High Sierra will get 2 more years of security updates. Sierra has already had a year, so it gets 1 more year of security updates. El Capitan 10.11 will have already had its final security update. It's not going to get any more. And a related issue for that is Safari, which operates on the same time schedule. Safari 12 came out last week. Safari 12 runs on Mojave, High Sierra, and Sierra. Does not run on El Capitan. So if you're running a Mac, which is a 2009 or 2010 model, it's able to upgrade to, late 2009 or 2010, it's able to upgrade to High Sierra and no further. If you've got a mid-2009 or older Mac, it may be able to upgrade to El Capitan, but no further, which basically means that those Macs are not going to get any further security updates. They're all cut off now. So mid-2009 and older Macs are at the end in terms of software updates, with the one exception, which is Apple's low-level, under-the-hood malware protection thing, which keeps going for much longer than all the other methods. But the major security updates, Safari updates and things, will have ceased. The only one left now is iTunes, which El Capitan gets to 1 more year if the pattern holds. So if you've got a 2012 or later Mac and you're already running El Capitan or Sierra, you can upgrade to Mojave any time in the next year without any problems in terms of security. If you've got a late 2009 or 2010 Mac, you should upgrade to High Sierra just so you can get security updates. But again, Sierra is okay for another year. El Capitan should be upgraded. If you have a mid-2009 or older Mac, you should be thinking about getting a newer machine or stop using that one with the internet at some point, though it's not a critical problem yet. Anybody have any questions on that pattern? That's sort of the general. Apple's been reasonably consistent now, apart from the question of when they do the cut-offs for model upgrades. It's the only variable bit, really. The pattern has been the same now for the last seven versions, yeah. Yep, in terms of how they support them. Okay. Only other thing we were going to talk about was photography related, which was basically random discussion on anything people want to talk about photography. We did have one subject to roll things off, which was Graham was interested in possibly mentioning Affinity Photo. Sorry? No, you haven't got your computer with you. No, right. I do, but I haven't done anything with it, so it's hard for me to demonstrate it. I bought it just out of principle.
Which you can do up until you have to go back on it. It's visual.
Find my iPhone again. Come on, come on. Lost it. There it is, taking its time. Yes, so I haven't actually downloaded the new version of the publisher one. Affinity Photo is one of the potential Photoshop replacements, which is about $75 to buy, I think. Just find out.
$60 US, what it is.
Just confirm it. I've already bought it, so I can't see the price there, but if I go into it, it's 75 New Zealand dollars, yep. So it's comparable to a fair degree of what Photoshop is able to do without every single whiz-bang feature. So if you want to do some really reasonably fancy photo editing, it covers the majority of what you might want to do, and it's not too extremely expensive. It's only $75 as a one-off purchase, rather than subscribing on a monthly basis is what Adobe wants you to do now with Photoshop. It's also worth mentioning a competing product to that, which I've actually had for a while, called Pixelmator. Yeah, Pixelmator I bought a while ago. That's only $22. Doesn't do anywhere near as much as Affinity Photo, but Pixelmator have also come out with the Pixelmator Pro version, which does a lot more than Pixelmator. I haven't bothered to buy that one because I've already got Affinity Photo and Pixelmator, and I didn't see much point spending more money on something I may or may not use. So I haven't actually investigated this one, but it's about halfway between them in terms of prices. So there are a few options in there. I know that Pixelmator Pro requires High Sierra, so you need to have a reasonably recent Mac running a new enough operating system. But Graham was wanting me to show you something in Affinity Photo.
You want to turn on for this one?
I can't. We haven't got the right network. We can't actually get the Wi-Fi working. The internet's not going through it for some reason.
It showed up on your list of options.
It does. It connects to it, but then it says there's no internet, so it's not working properly. It's the router is not working or something like that, or the Ethernet connection's broken or something. Can't tell which. Yep.
If you've got an old photograph, and I had one yesterday I had to scan back my photo, and it had whole heap of marks on it. So have you got anything at all?
I can find one. I'm thinking I've got one. If I go to my home folder, go into pictures, where did I put it? Wasn't that one? No, that was somewhere I had. I just can't remember where it was. There was a photo I had which was actually a black and white one, which has that sort of scratchiness effect on it. But I can't think off the top of my head where it would have been. It wasn't in my photo library. It's all I can remember. If I go search for images, how do I search for images? They may not be identifiable except by driver's license. No, that wasn't it.
You're not doing anything at all.
I am now, but
Just do a search for scratch back on my photo.
yeah. I'm just trying to think. There was one I can particularly remember I had, but I've forgotten where I put it, and it's not one I've organised because it wasn't one. I didn't want it in my library, so it's floating around somewhere on my computer, but I can't even remember what it was called, so that doesn't help matters. Okay, so if we go to search on the internet for scratched photos. So if I say, for example, that one.
Just a working colour all over the place.
Yeah. So if we pick, say it's that one, it's a reasonable example. So that's sort of a more of a guideline. We want to, let's go into images. Well, that was a reasonable example. I thought it's got a, Yes. Save image to downloads. Is that can actually save the image? Wrong way. Let's go into one downloads. Drop that into Affinity Photo. There we go. We have it loaded. Yep.
Okay, so if you go to your tools, on the left-hand side of that,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a
Selection brush. What are we looking for? Pen. Healing brush.
Click on that. No, just click on it and hold down.
Ah, to get the menu. Yep.
Go to it says technical involvement.
In painting brush tool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, you start painting over top, make a smaller brush if you can.
Okay. How do you adjust the brush size?
Top left. It's got width up there.
Width. Gotcha. 64 pixels. So I can just adjust that down to a 16. Yeah, it's about that. Yep.
Just paint over the top of some of it, turn around, just here, say, here. And then just let go. And we can piece pretty quick.
It's not too bad.
Paint over the top of some of it, just keep painting over it.
Yeah, pupils would be replenished.
Yes, they've been red-eye reducted. If I could do the same sort of
Pupils are actually up above
thing.
that. Oh, the pupils are, yeah, they've been.
I don't know how the hang this
Depends how you look at it.
software does it. But it works out, joining pictures.
Wow.
And it goes, oh, gone.
Yeah, gone. And if I do it actually going, I was deliberately avoiding going across bits that are changing colour. But if I try it this time, it's not perfect, but it's like it's missed a spot there.
When you go back and you fix up the bits,
Prematurely, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it works better if you try and stick to areas of one colour, because it's doing weird. It's doing slightly weird effects if I mix them. But that's not bad.
don't ask me how it does it.
Pretty good, isn't it?
No, that was no good. Let's go and do that one. I went over his eyebrow.
You can also adjust the width of the brush as well, makes a
Yeah.
little difference.
Now, it's not doing anything about the spotty background.
No,
the
it's-
spotty lines across it.
No, well that's a grain effect that's on the image, isn't it? So you can see that there as I'm zoomed right in.
The photo album has got the sticky stuff.
Yes,
across.
that's right.
And from time to time, everybody has photos like this. It's good.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, that's. You mean if I zoom it back to normal size again? So you,
It's fantastic, isn't it?
yeah, I was just deliberately zooming the image in so you can see what it was doing. But
So it's using
Affinity Photo, yeah,
And so it buried away, if you didn't know about it,
yeah.
So if you have your photos with defective
Mm,
and font in here, this is the corrective procedure.
mm.
well, it does it in colour photos as well.
Mm.
So it doesn't take much.
So it must be taking like averaging effects from nearby and trying to work out. Yeah, but it's doing a pretty good job. It's not perfect, but it's
It's a hell of a lot quicker than using the clone tool, tell
yeah.
That's like better than photos.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Now, tell me, is that the only tool that you have? You said.
Oh, there's heaps of other tools.
No, well look down the left-hand column here. We've got
Point stuff on the
Endless.
flood fills, gradients, paint brushes with colour replacement brush or pixel tool. What's that one? Paint mixer brush. That's the erase brush tool, which has got background erase brush or flood erase. What's that one? Dodge brush, burn brush, sponge brush. That one is a stamp of some kind. Clone. Yeah. Undo. Blur. It's got blurs, sharpen, median, and smudge. That's one you've been using the in-painting brush tool. There's red eye removal tool, blemish removal, patch, and healing brush tools. So those are all just variations on a theme. Pen and node, and that's probably rectangles. Yeah, rectangles, ellipses, various shapes. Text. I'm assuming artistic text.
That's actually vegetatives.
What's the graph, the purpose of that graph up the top right?
It's the bluntness.
That's showing you the what's it called, the histogram levels. So it's showing you how the separate. You can see the separate red, greens, and blues. It's to do with the amount of each colour sort of, yeah. going from the black end of the white to the white end of the scale, what proportion of the image is in each colour band, or if you like, sort of, isn't it?
It's a click on which is all channels.
You can just say only look at the red, for example.
Okay, so it's just giving you the difference.
So separating them out. So that's telling you that this particular photo has got an awful lot of dark green, and it's sort of fading off towards the bright end, for example. So this is it's given me the impression that this is a rather dark photo overall. So you can actually adjust the levels as well if you need to brighten the whole thing up. You can control it and refer to that.
It's a black and white photo, effectively,
Yeah.
but in actual fact it's an RGB photo.
Yeah, but it's, so you can see that the colours are similar, but they're not identical. So it's not perfectly black and white.
You can change it to.
So the lady there, for example, on the clothing,
Yeah,
it's quite indistinct, isn't it?
yeah.
There are sort of indications of.
Yes, you can't really make out where she ends and the next person, apart from there's a part of his clothing is suddenly ending where his shoulder is located. So it's a black and white, obviously black and white photo in this case. What's that one down there? That's mesh warp perspective, and that's zoom.
Levels to alter the dark part of the picture.
Yeah.
Too. So you might be able to pick out a bit more detail on that.
Yeah, so I can immediately just click on these to lighten and darken it. Darken it actually looks better to my eye. If I adjust that out of the way, and you can control it precisely using the black level, white level, so I can shift the black up.
To get that contrast.
Yeah, and the white down, which really washes it out, that sort of thing. So often I gather it's quite a useful technique. There's a black section here which has got nothing in it at all. So by raising the black level, that improves the contrast quite a lot. But this is a sort of a technique you sort of need to learn, and many of these photo editing programs have got the same capabilities. So this is not a unique feature. So gamma, what's gamma's going to look like? That's
And it's mid-levels, mid-tones.
yeah. That's interesting. You can actually mostly get rid of that stripy effect. It gets worse down that end. But you don't
Just wait for that stroke effect to just go slight blue into it,
blur, right?
and sharpen it up to the blue.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's something I haven't really played with much. So
So
layers.
just for a real
Effects.
cheap price, really, $75 is pocket money. You've got an editing program for photos, which is way better than the photos program. And if I start doing things like getting rid of scratches and tears and all sorts of things on scanned photos, just tool it over the show is quite magic. Makes things very quick.
It does support CMYK as well for anything that people care. If anybody cares about that, that's a feature which typically you need Photoshop for.
That also works in the publisher because that's where you see prints out CMYK as well.
Yep. So it's just worthy of being aware of it at this stage, and I don't know I think they've got a time-limited demo version you can download as well if you want to play with it from their website. Yeah. So the where is their website? So affinity.serif.com, I remember is the name of the. Yeah, been there before. They've now got 3 programs in the suite for the Mac. They've got Affinity Photo, which is what we've just been looking at. There's an iPad version of that as well, which actually lets you do things like sketch with a pencil if your iPad supports the Apple Pencil. Affinity Designer, and it also has an iPad version, which is used for doing graphical drawing and artwork and that sort of thing, like the picture behind it. And Affinity Publisher, which they've now got out in beta, which is used for doing desktop publishing work. So they are roughly the equivalent of Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator. Wrong order. Designer is equivalent to Illustrator, and Publisher is equivalent to InDesign in terms of what they're capable of. So for doing higher end artwork of any kind, basically they're a useful suite, and they all integrate with each other tidily as well in the same sort of way that Photoshop does. And at some point they're probably going to come out with an asset management tool, which they'll be wanting to do, so they keep adding more tools to the suite.
So how does it compare with the one you were talking about, the one that you have?
Pixelmator? I haven't used it enough yet to get a good feel for it. I think it's just basically a lot more powerful. There's more that you can do with it, and it's probably fancier. Pixelmator actually does quite a bit already. And I haven't used it much, but I've used it for things like annotating photos and putting, like I wanted to mark a section of a photo and you can do layers and things like that, so it's quite good for doing somewhat complicated photo editing tasks where you want to use part of a photo and do things to it and then do something else. That sort of thing, yeah. Certainly you can do more in Pixelmator than you can in Photos built-in editor. It's one thing I have noticed is that Pixelmator is able to be integrated into Photos. If I go into Photos, can't type, Photos, and I find it's birthday party photos, which are the most recent ones. Let's find something, what's that? Oh. Lotto from last Saturday, that'll do. Reasonably neutral photo to play with, I don't care about it anymore. If I go and edit that photo, can I go edit with, how do you actually tell it to edit with other applications? I've forgotten. Oh, there you go. Affinity and Pixelmator both have some plugins which directly integrate with photos. So I can actually go edit in Affinity Photo and just to click that, and it loads that photo into Affinity Photo. File to open file because it doesn't support the file type. In this case, Affinity Photo does not yet support HEIF, the new file format that Apple's been using since last year on their photos. So you need to be a bit careful what file formats you're using. So I had to export that as a JPEG first of all so I could edit it. But if I find an older one, I can export it from Photos as a file, but that's the built-in editor I was wanting to demonstrate. So where's Photos gone? Oh, just quit it by accident. That'll do. Photos, let me find an older photo, which I know will not be in that format. Somewhere back here, not that far back, but well, that'll do, that's an interesting one. If I go in there and go edit, and go ... edit an Affinity Photo, yeah, that loads all right. So that would be, yes, it integrates it tidily so that it behaves like the old iPhoto edit and the external application works. So I think they cooperate. It actually implements it by doing an export to a temporary location, edits the temporary copy, and then it re-imports it again. So it's quite tidy. I don't want to fiddle with that photo because I quite like that one. I took that. That's just a nicely lit photo going down through the wharf at Wellington Waterfront. Yeah, with the done with my 3 megapixel Olympus C2020 camera many years ago.
You weren't even in the water.
No, I'm just looking down at it. Just the sunlight was just right. And you can see that there's a chain. It's actually on the somewhere around Taranaki Street wharf. I can't remember exactly where I was at the time when I took it, but it was in that area.
You could have said you were snorkeling.
Yes. I got this wonderfully sharp photo in a non-waterproof camera. Yes, it's great. Old scratched. Hang on, why is it? Oh, this is actually imported as another layer. Apple's photo. No, that's actually two separate. I want to close that one. There we go. Yep. Cancel. Yeah, I don't want to actually edit it, so there we go. It's done. I've avoided editing it by accident because it wanted to go through an extra step to bring it back in again. But that's just demonstrating that you can actually integrate the two of them together, which is quite nice. But just looking at the built-in edit features in Photos, you can see it's got it has got quite a few editing capabilities, so I can adjust the highlights or something. There isn't much. You can see it's changing the green mostly with that one. The contrast, that sort of thing. So it's got quite a few editing capabilities. That's sort of a rather dramatic version of it, but you lose a lot of detail. Reset adjustments. I don't actually want to do any of those. And levels. There's the histogram again, you see. So that's actually available in Photos if you know where to look. So you can use that to adjust your black point, your midpoint, your white point, and it's also got a halfway between adjustment point as well, which I didn't quite work out how to operate, but that's sharpen, and it's got a whole bunch of sort of standard entire photo adjustments as a built-in feature without you having to use anything else. That's the High Sierra version of Photos. They keep adding more features each version, so you
That's improved on how it looks.
Yeah.
You go to the one for
have the next one down called curves, that you can have then actually move the curve,
Different colours too.
yeah, and you can change everything.
Yeah, that's quite cute.
Yeah.
Yes, what's wrong with watching the keys pop too? Or down the option key, click again.
Sorry, option.
Yeah.
Click on the same line you'll do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ah, Bezier curve.
And you can change one part without affecting the other part.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Yes, there's all sorts of things that you can play with in there if you want to. So,
I
yes.
notice on photos modifications, if you take out a stake or something in the ground, you're kind of left with a furry, lodgy bit that doesn't look exactly like the vegetation that's which I suspect is going to be different on Affinity.
Yeah, well, that's where you want to use something like a cloning tool to copy something nearby which looks similar, and you can use it to paste over the gap. So if you have a stake in the middle of a lawn, for example, you have lots of similar looking grass, so it's easy to say, copy this bit here, and you probably won't notice. But there's no cloning tool built into this, for example, I don't think.
Well, not yet.
No.
It could be in the next version, for you know.
So if I go into Affinity Photo and I want to do something like get rid of that odd-looking patch there, for example, can you see that? Can I zoom? Where's the zoom feature on this? Right, you can see there's a funny-looking patch there. Not sure what that was, but it shouldn't be there. So if I find the cloning tool, which one's that? Rubber stamp. And then I click to select a source, and then you must option click. If you want to go option click, yeah, okay. So then I should be able to. That's probably the wrong shape. Yeah, so I can actually now just go dragging over that, and it's the wrong shade. There's the only problem. It's not quite perfect because the colours don't match. Why is that?
You also adjust the opacity. Put it on top.
Because you probably picked the wrong pixel.
There we go. That's better. It's not perfect. Oh, I'm going too far as well. Yeah, it's a matter of practice to get this right. So I can use a smaller cloning tool, but I can use that to carefully paint out as long as I'm far enough away, and it's copying from the plus point, which moves relative to. It's basically doing a direct copy relative to where I was. So that's actually not too bad. But I'd probably find this was actually better by using one of the automatic healing tools or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Just click on the half black and half.
Up here.
Yeah.
Option click on it, man.
Yeah.
About there.
And I'll shift over to the new area. And notice the little circle there is actually showing you what you're going to be putting down.
Yep. Right. That explains it. Yep.
That doesn't work on the Photoshop.
Right. Okay. So it's giving you an idea of what's going to happen. So if I go option click here, then that's showing you what it would look like if I actually clicked to overdo it, or if I come down. You can see that the shade of green is not actually consistent. It's changing quite a bit from one spot to another.
What you can also do is you go up to the flow rate, up top, you've got brush and you've got opacity, and flow rate, and you can actually make it so it's got soft edges, and so it doesn't give you a hard edge. There's all sorts of things you can play around with. You won't probably see it too much in the way.
Oh yeah, I can see a bit of it there. It's sort of smoothing in rather than doing a very round, hard circle. So, and you can also obviously adjust the width of this again to make it a smaller thing I'm working with. So the cloning tool is smaller now, so rather than being a large circle, it's a small circle. So there's quite a lot of fiddling you can do. It's a matter of getting used to what tool's capable of. But I'm not going to bother saving that because I like my little defect in the photo. Don't save.
You take a photograph as being proof of something or other.
Yeah. No. Yes, Donald Trump was in this photo. No, he wasn't. Or whatever it might be.
I just must say, I live over in the western suburbs and hills, and sometimes there's a terrific crowd of pictures. One I couldn't believe, here is a pair of eyes looking down from the sky. Crowd shaped like eyes, with a hole in the middle where the people should be.
Oh, wow.
So I took a picture and I sent that off to somebody, and they never published it. They probably
Rotten swines.
Hmm.
Yes, I was wearing shorts that day, I can tell. Yeah. Yes, I was walking around Northern, I was doing all sorts of things, getting used to my new camera at that time. Yes. Okay. What else? Anything else anybody want to talk about photography related? Yeah, questions?
The edges have gone blue again. Whoops, and then they've gone away.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's coming and going.
Yep.
I didn't see it. Was it anything to do with what I was doing, like leaning forward? No, doesn't seem to be. No, okay, mystery. So we don't know what's causing it. Okay, so questions, anybody, for anything photographic related or photography related that you want to talk about or ask about or compare notes with other people, or experiences with cameras, experiences with software?
One thing you could do, I noticed that the Melbourne Youth Group has a Photoshop special interest group. And there's quite a lot of stuff goes into the monthly newsletter. That we could actually hold a, like an iPad group, we could hold a photo group from time to time if people are interested. Start looking at how to modify things and how to do more detailed stuff.
Because if there's enough interest in that sort of thing, it might be the sort of thing we could run once a year, even all that sort of order of magnitude, just occasionally. It'd probably be at somebody's house rather than a hired venue, because it makes more sense to be with somebody who's willing to host, who's actually got some photos they want to do things with as an experiment, learning how to use some of these more advanced tools, perhaps, or better ways of cataloguing them or organising them, things like that.
To drive, yeah?
Yes, that's good.
I'm happy to
Coordinate it. Yes, most of my recent photos have been record keeping more than anything else. This was an interesting one.
That's what I found running my iPad groups at people's houses. It's just more relaxed, more thing, because you're actually in a home environment. Yeah, and you could just sit there on people's couches and just have fun. It's just awesome.
If people are interested, so we'll go for it. Don't need a large number of people, just a few, you know.
That was an accidental screenshot.
I'm happy to choose whatever I know.
Sapphire and steel.
He
Yes.
could just stand
Or
on the
cats.
ground, you know, he can run it, and if you email him, we can just work out how many numbers, and somebody's got enough room at their house, you can just do it.
Give it to it, WelMac.
Yeah, just very well, mate.
Yeah, that'll get me as well, but that's all right. It gets the ground, so that'll work. Yes, the reason there are photos of crosswords there is I found a quite useful technique. I was able to take photos of crosswords from the newspaper at the local cafe with my phone. Rather than drawing on their newspaper, I could use annotation on the screen using my finger to answer the crossword, not have to write it in their newspaper.
We actually did that last month at the iPad group. Ken Milne wanted some crosswords and some Sudokus to do, so we did that from, because previous month we had the library come along, so I showed them how to do that, take a print, and then I sent it up to Janet Milne's printer upstairs and printed it, and they went up and grabbed it. So it was really good.
Yeah, because I've actually got a Sudoku app, but if I go back into those photos again, where's it on photos?
Yeah.
Find one of them, go edit, and then go markup. I can now pinch to zoom and look at the clues. So that says could be chased. I'm just trying to find one that's reasonably obvious. 19 down dialect. Respond. Trying to find a clue which I can easily get torn. There's one. 16 down. So all I need to do is get to this point and just start, find the right pen, just go. Something like that, just draw on it, and then I can pinch to zoom and to see the answers again. So rather than actually having a pen and paper, I just do it on the phone. and they can do it in a different colour or something like that to make it easier to stand out or whatever. And you can, if you make a mistake, you can backtrack and erase them without having to cross things out and that sort of thing. So it's quite
Choose the eraser
Yeah.
and erase it off.
yeah. I thought it was quite cute. But
What program was that?
that's just using markup in the built into the Photos app.
Oh, okay.
So I just positioned this over the newspaper, took a photo, and then hit edit, hit markup, found the markup command, and then was able to draw it with my finger. So I didn't even need a fancy tool.
And you can do it in notes as well.
Yeah.
It's a markup feature.
If I find something which I want to go, how do you insert a photo? It's in.
Plus. Hit the plus at the bottom. See, just above the
Oh,
highlight.
there. Yep.
Yep.
Wait. Plus. It's not letting me. Then how do I get a photo? Is what I want to know. I've
The
done it
one
before.
Right at the bottom. See the one that you've got markup thing along the bottom. Go
Oh, there.
back.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that one.
There
Yep.
we go. So I can grab that, for example. Oh, it's actually scanned documents. It's trying to find the whole page. I can just drag around the corners for the bit that I want. That'll do. Close enough. Keep scan, and then once I've got a scan in the in there, I can go done. I've finished it. What's it doing there? I can't cancel that. I don't want that anymore. No, I don't want to discard it.
Just save it.
I'll save it again.
Yeah.
We've got the save button. There we go. Now it's actually in there.
You've
I
got
can
the
go
markup pencil at the bottom and you can
mark
now
up. So I can now. I should be able to pinch to zoom, but it won't let me do that.
How do you get the markup?
there's a little markup thing at the bottom.
Doesn't seem to be letting me mark up anything. There's the. Give me another colour so I can actually see what I'm doing. Is what? I didn't do what I expected. I've done it in photos, but I haven't done it in.
Just hit done again at the top. Did you change something? See the markup bit at the bottom?
Yeah, that's what I was doing, but I didn't do anything.
No, I was showing people where it was.
Yeah. I don't quite get that. It isn't doing what I expected. Works a lot more sensibly in photos. I can't actually mark anything up on this. If I choose that and choose a different pencil type. Yeah, it's okay, that's fine. Why can't I? It's not actually drawing anything on it. And I drag it and it disappears again. I don't quite get that. It's
We have to get something right, we get pins.
yeah, it's odd. It seems to be a bit bizarre, but in photos it works nice and easily. If I have a photo, if I want to edit that photo I've previously taken, I just say edit. I then use the ... button at the bottom, and markup is one of the options in there. I choose markup, and then that gives me the markup tools along the bottom, which is the same we just saw. So I can pick a colour, like blue, a pen type. I'll use a fine tip pen, makes most sense in this case, and then I can pinch to zoom using two fingers, and 16 down I worked out torn is probably ripped, so I just zoom in enough so I can see it, and then I can just write in ripped, and if I actually make a mistake I can then use the undo button in the bottom left corner to undo each of the strokes that I did. So you can just scribble on top of the image, and once you're done it becomes part of the image, except that you can then go back and do it again and edit the markup a second time, I think, and I can lasso all of that and then go, how do I delete it?
Or does that only work on the iPad, that notes thing?
Oh, well, it's the tools were there, so I should be able to just erase that. Yeah, I can erase bits of my markup using the eraser. I'm not sure what the lasso did, but yeah. So I haven't quite worked out how to use all the features of it, but it's effectively a layer on top of the photo, so I can add my own little annotations to it as I see fit. So I can draw big stripes all over the top or whatever it might be, and not particularly usefully. Undo that. Let's get that.
I see. I've got a photo there. It allows you to draw the bottom part, but not actually physically on the photo. So if I change that, see?
That's just a normal drawing tools then. That's not actually markup of the image.
Yeah.
That's different. Yeah. Okay, because I know you can freehand draw in notes. That's a different feature. Okay.
maybe photos or scanned documents. Maybe that changed this.
No, I think it's just, we just didn't find the right thing. It's you need to mark up the photo separately from the drawing tools, which look the same, just to confuse you. Okay. Anyway, so any other photography-related things people want to talk about? If not, we might call it a night because it's 9:30, which is sort of our official ending time. We can actually have an early night for a change.